to the Whatnauts review show number 233. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was nice. Watched the whole parade. My favorite thing every year. Missouri University was the first marching band in the parade. It's not a university I went to, but I felt a deep sense of Missouri pride.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my mom's favorite thing for Thanksgiving is to watch the parade. So they came over. It was their first time here in Oklahoma, but we got to watch the parade, and very surprised that the big performance at the end that they were like hinting at was not the like, oh my God, it's Santa again, which he was there, but he was Santa was relegated to the end credits, and not like he's here. There he is. Okay, and now we can end the show. It was like, and Mariah Carey is here. That's how we're ending the show. And then Santa was like the end credits.
Well, you can't just go to your local mall and see Mariah Carey. She doesn't send helpers to the mall. There's Santas all over the place. This is a good Santa, but like he doesn't sing. He doesn't speak. But he just waves.
I'm always used to Santa being like the big thing. Like, this is what we're ending the show with. Except this year they were like, we have something big. We're ending the show with something special. And it was Mariah Carey. So it was just like, oh, interesting. Didn't know they were going to do that. Switching things up a little bit there. So it was good. It was fun. But if you guys did not know, every week here on the Whatnauts review show, we have a different story to talk about. It could be a movie, a TV show, a comic, a manga, anime, all sorts of stuff. We read it, we watch it, we come back here and we talk about it. Melissa, this week we are concluding our coverage of Kaijumax. We have been covering this comic as one of our end of the month specials here that we do on the show. We like to pick something that we can stick with for multiple times to its completion instead of just as much as we can do in one week. So volumes 5 and 6 of Kaijumax, that is what we are covering this week. Thankfully, there was a little bit less confusion on where and how to get this on Comixology. When we first started this, they did not have that 6th volume on Comixology yet. You could only get the single issues on there. But here we are. By time we got to do it this week, they had that 6th volume on there. So we got to read volume 5 and 6. Proper.
A Thanksgiving miracle.
Yeah, thank you, Mariah Carey, for helping us out there. But yeah, it was good. Melissa, do you want to help kind of catch us up with what had been happening on Kaijumax and what vaguely happened in this without really spoiling it much? Plot synopsis-ish?
I will say that as we've gone through this series, it is a lot more episodic than I would have expected. There's less of the major event that is the climax of the final volume is not anything you really see coming. It wasn't really seeded that much throughout the previous volumes, which is not a failing. It's just something that I think is helpful to know going into these books. It's less of an overarching story. There's really good character journeys, but the journeys they go on are like filled with these little episodes. And last volume, Electogor was finally reunited with his kids, and then they were all thrown back into Kaijumax. So he's there trying to protect his little boy who's there in Kaijumax with him. He puts a hit out on Zon, the worst guy, and his daughter is struggling over there in the ladies' wing of Kaijumax. And she starts a relationship with Dr. Zhang, Dr. Zhan Zhang, who is a human who got stuck in like giant Ultraman form and did a crime. And they're like, you're too big for human prison, so we have to send you to Kaijumax. She's still there. She's still there. They haven't solved that problem. She's still big. Will she ever get small again? Who knows? But in this volume, we see a war has been brewing amongst various alien entities on the fringes of the story. They are coming here to attack Earth, and the various Kaijumax prisoners can volunteer to serve in this war, and they're going to get like clemency for minor crimes. They could get time off for good behavior. Like, it is a good deal for them. And Electogor in particular takes advantage of this because he's like, oh, my daughter's probably going to sign up for this thing. Out there in the battlefield, like, I can see her again.
Right.
The way I haven't been able to visit her here in the prison system. So you see these characters like leave the prison for the first time in ages. And it's about them exploring the small sense of freedom and what they do with it and who they encounter and how it changes them on this journey.
And I do have to say, Volume 5 also covered like the inmates who are on death row. To be honest, Melissa, I can't believe you didn't mention that, because there are two characters in there that I was like, instantly, Melissa is gonna love these characters.
They were the highlight of the book, the highlight of the series for me, honestly, is what a perfect parody he does of some of my favorite characters. But again, like, that's stuff that doesn't really have a lot going to it or a lot coming from it. And it takes us away from, like, we started this journey thinking Electogor, that's a protagonist, but we spend over half of the book overall away from Electogor, or like away from his family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's kind of where this book ends up. Is it just, each volume is kind of a more, like you said, self-contained episode, a different aspect of prison life or prison economy, or the like how the world reacts around it. Different aspects of how you might explore that theme, and then of course, since it's all about kaiju, you have to mix in like giant monsters attacking and alien invasions and stuff like that. So these books are never boring. They're never slow. There's always something that's happening, that's going on. I think that that is a real strength of the book here. So good stuff. So now that we have read all of that, Melissa, what did you think of these final two volumes here?
You can really see the storytelling and the artistry elevate from the previous volumes. I think the most emotionally striking things and the most visually arresting things are in these final volumes.
I would agree.
Again, it's particularly dealing with stuff that is new, with these characters who are new or have just been like very small appearances up until now. It's amazing that this doesn't even happen with the characters we have spent the most time with. Like, even with characters he hasn't spent as much time with, Zander Cannon can still like really know how to deliver a punch to you with them. Like, he knows the best emotional beat to hit, not just on the main characters, but on the characters who've existed for like 3 pages.
Yeah. I enjoyed these final 2 volumes a lot. I think the maturity level in which Zander Cannon is telling these stories, like you said, like, you can just see the difference from like where it was volume 1 to where it ends up in volume 6 here. Even some of the artwork, right? Just the way light is shining on some of these characters, the way that these stories are depicted, where it flashes back and forth between these 2 stories. I just think it's incredible storytelling. I enjoyed it a lot. We did get an answer to a mystery that we started in volumes 1 and 2 that I was very satisfied with, and that was also one of the more emotional moments of this book. What is like, it is this like side story throughout all of the volumes. It's in there, but it's never the main focus. And then it hits you in these last two volumes here. So I have to say, I think Kaijumax is a success. I like it a lot. I think this was a great book. And like we've said on the past two times that we've covered it, it's just a lot of fun. It's so good.
It really is. Yeah. As much as the storytelling and the themes mature in this volume, in these final two volumes we read, they're also just as silly as they have ever been. Like one of the silliest jokes is in these final two volumes. It's a joke that's so good, like you don't even laugh. Your head just like elevates. Like you're on a new profound level of being after seeing this joke. It's above laughter.
Yeah. I do have to say, because we read these volumes individually and we did not read the like deluxe edition, we did not get the like Zander Cannon's like commentary underneath, which even though I didn't read every single one of those comments in the past, I did like having that in there. And there were, I don't remember what they were off the top of my head, but there were a couple times that I was like, ooh, I wish I knew what this was a reference to. And I didn't have that note to be like, this is a reference to this thing. But I enjoyed this book a lot. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. It was a blast for sure. Cool. Well, I don't really have anything else that's like spoiler free to mention about this book, except that I guess volume 5 also does like a real interesting spoof on Pokemon, which I was not expecting, but that was good.
Right. Like that is such a treat. And not just Pokemon, like it's specifically Pokemon the anime. There's stuff from the video games and the card games and the anime. Like a lot of different aspects of Pokemon get in there. Not just like the visual iconography of what you see as just a person living in the world for the past 25 years, but their sincere attention was paid to Pokemon the show. And that really had my heart. What a treat. What a joy.
Absolutely. It was another one of those things, just like when in the first two volumes when we got to see all the like Cthulhu mythos monsters and stuff like that. It was like, oh yeah, those are monsters. There is like lore and mythology with that. I just didn't expect that to be in this book with a name like Kaiju. Like I specifically think of like Japanese monsters when I think of Kaiju. So it's a real treat sometimes to see where this book is like, oh, Pokemon. Yeah, those are pocket monsters. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Like neat stuff. So I had a blast. But that said, let's take a quick break and we will do some housekeeping. And then when we get back, we will dive into spoilers for this book. So we will be right back. We put a lot of hard work into the shows that we make. And yes, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts. And we'd love it if you check them all out. You can find out more information on our website at thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in the Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. If you want to support what we do here at the Whatnauts, patreon.com/the Whatnauts is the best place to do that. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. You can get all kinds of exclusive content at the $3 tier. You can also get a shout out and a thank you on all of our shows at the $5 tier. You can support us on Twitch by subscribing to our channel at twitch.tv/the Whatnauts, and we would love to have you all join us for our live streams and talk with us in the chat. And lastly, we have merch. If you'd like to grab yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt or a mug or something else, go to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. And we are back. A big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We love you a lot.
Thank you.
It means a ton. For those of you at the $3 tier, don't forget that this November, in 2022, we covered Mystery Incorporated on the Pilots Club. It was a live-action fan-made Scooby-Doo series. We covered the pilot on that one. And coming up in December, we are doing one on the pilot of Smash. Melissa, what was the pitch for that one again?
Smash was a show about the production of a Broadway musical.
That's right. Okay.
When it was airing, it seemed like it was a show that people like. It has the sort of reputation of something like Riverdale or Glee, where it's like, this is preposterous. I love it.
Sure.
This is so dumb. I have to watch all of it. It's one of those.
Garbage, but I love it, right?
What?
Yeah.
Well, I thought coming off of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with those Broadway numbers in it, let's watch the show about a Broadway musical.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So be on the lookout for that in December. That's what will be up on the Pilots Club. Cool things that we've been up to here at the Whatnauts. It's been bit of a strange time because we just had Thanksgiving here, so things got delayed or pushed around. We're recording this podcast a little bit later than we normally do, but we have our first half of our reaction review theory discussion coverage of 1899 on Netflix.
Yeah.
And we will be doing our second half of that this next week, so be on the lookout for that. That's been a very exciting show. My mom was asking me about that. Like somehow she had heard about the show. And I was like, I didn't think you would have even known about that show. But it somehow made her radar too. But yeah, let's see. On the captain's log, of course, we took the week off this past week. But the start of December, which is coming up real soon here, be on the lookout for our Rotten Tomatoes movie prediction game. We will be checking the results from this past year as well as doing our stuff for this next year, picking out 20 or so movies that are coming out in 2023 and trying to predict what the Rotten Tomatoes score will be for each of them. So that's a lot of fun. And then, of course, here on the review show, we are about to start our holiday picks here in December next week, which we'll remind you again at the end of the show, is the Muppets Christmas Carol. Is that it? That's right. That's the name of it, right?
Yes.
The Muppets Christmas
Carol. It might be like the Muppet Christmas Carol. Muppet is an adjective, not a noun. It's that. It's that. You go to Disney Plus and there it is.
There it is, indeed. So lots of fun and exciting stuff coming up here on the Whatnauts. But without further ado, let's get back to Kaijumax with some spoilers. There we go. Okay. The Pokemon is where so this one is really, really interesting because each of the volumes, like we said, end up being episodic in a way, but they're pulling in different references, not only from like the monster design and the tattoos on the monster, but even some of the like the plots or the slang that they have, right? They're all references to this. Volume 5 to me was really, really interesting because I think within the first like page or two, it hits you with three major things, right? It's Pokemon. Like very obviously, it's a spoof on Pokemon, but it's reversed, right? Where the monsters are using humans to battle each other.
Yeah.
But then the volume 5 is entitled The Orange Mile, which is then, of course, the Green Mile, right? The famous movie about the inmates on death row there. But then also 8 Mile, which the human that they send out is this like scrawny white kid that looks like Eminem. That it's supposed to be like some kind. I mean, they're physically fighting, but I think it's also supposed to be like a spoof on like a rap battle. there.
Yes.
Which is really interesting. And that would like I
so many layers.
I felt like Volume 5 came out really strongly.
Yeah.
And it was such a pleasant surprise then to have this like Pokemon metaphor and Easter eggs and references just continue the entire volume. So let's dive into that.
Yeah. Go
ahead.
This is a storyline that had a little bit of setup to where some of the characters within Kaijumax would reference the Dawn. Like the Dawn is their Dawn. It's their crime boss who's like outside. And we see that this crime boss has finally been arrested, is brought into Kaijumax, is going to stand trial, could get the death penalty. And
Picadon.
We've only heard this. Yeah, we've only heard their name alluded to, and finally we see it. It's a big green, officially different from Pikachu, a character called the Picadon. And he's
legally
so
distinct
tough
Picadon.
looking.
Yeah.
And they delay it for so long to where it's like he's in court and they're grilling him in court and they're like, is that what you said you did? What is your reaction to this? And that's when he finally says, Pika. They hold back on the reveal that no, he only says his own name.
He still only says that, yeah. Which is great. But like he again, he's another one of these giant kaiju that have all of these like tattoos and stuff on him, which are just continued references to Pokemon. I forget the ones that are on there, but they're all very blatant of just like, oh, that's another, like that's a reference to the theme song, or that's a reference to the card game, or just in general, like Untrained or something like that. Like that,
never fled.
Right.
Get that spray.
But then so the lawyers that are assigned to his case are late. They don't show up. You don't know who they are, but like their assistant is this just kind of like it's hard to like. What was he supposed to look like? Was that supposed to be a reference to something too?
His name is Gonkle, and if you picture whatever a Gonkle is in your head, he looks like that. He looks kind of like, right. He reminded me of Bartok from Anastasia. He's like a weird little bat guy.
Yeah.
But he's got like, the Simpsons episode where Lisa needs braces and the dentist is showing the progression of, well, if you don't get Lisa braces in 5 years, this is what her teeth will look like. He's got those teeth.
Interesting. Yeah, he looked like something like it was one of those things of like, I wish I knew if this was a reference to something, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, and he's just this like annoying little guy who's like, I'm the lawyer's assistant. Intern something, and you're just like, oh no, this guy has no idea what he's doing.
He also has a lot of Louis Tully from Ghostbusters 2 specifically.
Sure, yeah. And eventually the lawyers show up. There's 2 of them, and they're brother and sister.
They are not.
It's rhyming.
I don't think they are.
Or, well, I don't know, but
they're a pair. Like they're an absolute Team Rocket. Like, and they were.
It's a Team Rocket spoof, and I was like, Melissa is going nuts reading this book. She loves this. I guarantee it.
Team Rocket, my favorite characters in fiction. This is such a loving tribute to them. Characters who are anime specific. So if you're talking about just Pokemon, the entity, like you're not always going to get to them. You're going to focus more on like, things from the card game, things from the video game. The protagonist of the show, Ash. Like, not a lot of Pokemon parodies get deep enough to get to Team Rocket, but they're my favorites. And this is
Team Rocket is in the games, but you don't get Jesse and James specifically.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So
here they are.
Immediately I knew I was like, Melissa's going to have a blast with this. And the whole like rhyme that they do is the same cadence. It's the same rhyme scheme.
Yes.
It's just like, oh, this is great. But they have their whole like lawyer spiel that they do with that. Amazing. It was so good.
I was so impressed at how much care was put into this. Like their body language, the poses they do while they do this extended legal motto. Perfect. Spot on. This thing even ends with them blasting off into space with a little starlight burst. It's all there. Zander Cannon, thank you. I felt seen.
Yeah, which is interesting because when they did the spoof on Hamilton, like we at least got the like art homage. We got the homages to that. But Hamilton hasn't been like blasted in my brain enough that I know like if I'm reading the lyrics that like Green Humongo is saying, that I know how to match that up to whatever song that it's supposed. Like I don't know if that like if Zander Cannon was taking a specific song from Hamilton and like changing the lyrics to that to fit that same rhyme scheme and stuff. Like I can't recognize that off the top of my head, but the Team Rocket thing just immediately, like that first line, I was like, oh, he nailed it. Here we go. Buckle up. Let's go.
I love it. That was the highlight of the book to me. And you ever start a sentence and then your laptop's like, you need to plug me in? I had to do that. The joke I was referring to, like the best joke in this entire series, is when Picadon does not get off on trial. Like he is given the death penalty, and he's given this Pokemon style last rites by some sort of priest, and the priest is reading like the 23rd Psalm, but it's a Pokemon version, like though I walk through the valley of the shadow of Mount Moon or something like that. It's I forget everything in it, but it's really good. And you see him holding up a book. Then like it changes panels and you cut over his shoulder and he's just holding a binder of Pokemon cards.
It's great. Yeah.
That joke is next level. Like if you flipped over his shoulder and he's reading like that Pokemon handbook all of us got from the Scholastic Book Fair in the year 2000, I would have laughed. But the fact that it's not even a book of any kind, it's a trading card binder. He's reading the psalm off a trading card. Incredible. Profound.
Amazing. It was so good. But yeah, that is so also like as much as I said at the start that I think the maturity level of the storytelling by the end of this was a lot better. I also feel like there was more happening within these books, especially because it kept switching back and forth. So I might need a little bit of help to like remind myself of what was happening there. So he got arrested at the like human battling dojo gym battle thing, right? But his story also coincides with, and I forget her name, the one warden that was like extra hard on the prisoners.
Yes.
That showed
like
up
Matsumoto,
to kind of
I think,
audit the prison, and make sure everything was running. So we get a lot more of her backstory and like all of that stuff and how it fits in. And they kind of her thing is happening at the same time as that, right? It didn't have anything to do with Picadon's story, right?
No, those are separate stories. They're just both.
That's what I thought. Okay.
At the same courthouse. And the way they do the courthouse is really interesting because there's characters all over the earth and all over the galaxy. So it's like you put on like a VR helmet and you're projected inside this like crystal wire frame, like outside of time courthouse. It's really cool looking.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked that a lot. Like, why not? Especially if you are dealing with a prison and some of these people can't really be released to do like to get out to some court date because they might be dangerous, having a VR space is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
To tackle that issue there. So yeah, so that was one of the things that I had to clear up is like I felt like they were separate stories, and they are, but I also wasn't entirely sure since they was all in that same space there. So yeah, on top of that, we're getting more backstory of, and I need to look up her name here so I know what it is. No, I don't see it in the thing. Let me see if I can look it up just in the comic itself here. Comicsology. It's going to take me a little bit to find this. It has to download again. Dang it. Oh well. So yeah, we get more of the kind of, I'm gonna go with Osamu Tezuka style backstory, right? Where like she was a kid and somehow got involved with these scientists who like made this giant robot, and I forget exactly how her backstory went, but it also seemed to be kind of a tragic one here, and it added to her character. But then there was also the question of like she, I guess, one day responded to an event where one of her colleagues had died. There was a monster nearby, and that was the one who was arrested and put in prison, and they had a life sentence, all of this stuff. And then there's this alien from outer space who's trying to like get this guy freed because new evidence has come to light. And that one was interesting to me because the twist with that is that what we thought was a monster, right? Just this like crab-like monster.
It's a snail. It's a huge snail.
Right, yeah. It is actually like a giant robot, and no one knew. And like it's hollowed out on the inside, right? And there were all those people inside it, right?
Well, I don't think it's a robot. I think it is a living being. But yeah, if this is a kaiju that's like stories and stories and stories tall with this massive shell, there's an entire civilization of people living in the empty space inside the shell. So like they have been imprisoned for decades and like nobody has told anybody because it's like they live there in secret. It seems like the snail is like their god. And so like they're trying to get the snail monster out of prison, where it's like he was on the scene, but like there was no way that injury to that officer could have been caused by my client. Like we have new DNA evidence now. You have to let him go. Yeah, and that lawyer, he says that he's like projecting from outer space, but then it turns out he is projecting from inside the snail. Everybody lives inside the snail. And the snail is their god, their ship, their home. And now the snail can be released, and now they can be free.
Yeah, that was a really, really interesting twist.
Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, like we get these giant like robot things, and it's usually only one person inside them, except for the Voltron prison guards at the women's prison. But yeah, you usually only have like one person inside there, or it's an AI that runs the thing there. But this was something I and again, like I'm not as familiar with kaiju movies or stuff like that. I wonder if something like that had been explored before in some other kaiju movie. That since they are so big, like is there an ecosystem in them? Like do they have some, like that's really interesting. So yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot. That was a good twist that I did not see coming. That one also felt like even just those 1950s like sci-fi movies, or even like the Twilight Zone thing, where like it has this twist at the end that like it's not the thing is not a monster by itself, but there's people inside it. Oh my goodness, right? So yeah, man, I thought Volume 5 was really, really good. Came out swinging. I think it stayed strong. I felt like because the earlier volumes had felt a lot more singular in the story they were telling, and these last two start to jump around a little bit or do these like parallel stories, which it read a lot better to me. It read faster in a weird way. But it just because it's a little bit more mature, it felt a little bit more complex, and I had to be like, all right, wait, what's happening here again?
And the third story in Volume 5, like Volume 5 really does not spend a lot of time with Electogor. Like if I was introducing Kaijumax to somebody new, I would say this character who you're starting out with in Volume 1, he's always around, but the perspective is going to shift away from him a lot. Like that has been a surprise for me. Again, not a bad surprise. Just like, I wish I kind of had that mindset going into this book. Like you were going to see stories from all of these people, and you were going to spend a lot of time away from who you think the main character is. But also nobody really usurps him as being the main character. So we get the story about Sharkmon, who is this big, like, would be terrifying, but is very gentle monster on Kaijumax. We were introduced to at the very end of the previous volume. This is the one who adopted Daniel after he had to cross the river and had his goat demon powers taken away. And now he's just a regular goat. Like he's adopted Daniel the goat. And he set up a business where he's like the barber of Kaijumax, and there's like a plant monster who comes in and he just holds Daniel up to his head and he starts eating at his vine hair. It's very cute.
It's good stuff.
But a new monster comes in called Sprinkles the Unidragon.
Yes.
And those two start a romance, and then one of the gangs is pressuring Sharkmon to look. They think Sprinkles is a snitch. They're like sneak in. They want info on him. They want dirt on him. And Sharkmon doesn't know anything. So like I think he sends Daniel into the main offices to go in and like get a file or something. And he's flipping through the file and he learns about what it is that Sprinkles did. Sprinkles plucks off the horn out of his head, and then like it grows back instantly. So like he takes the horn and he becomes like the
horn, right? Yeah.
Right. He's the prison tattoo artist now. He starts up this tattoo business, giving everybody these really cool neon tats. But whatever ink is inside the horn will like give you this drug trip that's like beautiful and terrifying. And we learn that
it seems that he can kind of control like the severity of it too. Like if he wants to give someone a more pleasant time, he can kind of control it. It seemed like it also kind of doubled as this like agent of mind control to an extent. Not that he could actually make them like, now go like hug and kiss that guy, right? But like more so they were locked in their mind and he could control the dream, the trip that they were having. Which was interesting.
And you don't know why he landed in Kaijumax. This is not a character I think we've had any allusions to in the past.
Right.
Like we've got the characters we know. There's the characters we kind of know by name. Like we'd heard of the Dawn, or there will be like places or different like planets or alien races we've heard of. But I think Sprinkles was new, and he's more in that like 1980s My Little Pony, like Care Bear sort of style. And Sharkmon is opening his file and he learns what Sprinkles did to get into Kaijumax. And we see him like giving like magic candy to children. And the children like have these incredible dreams, these incredible visions. And he lures all of them onto a school bus. And you see this beautiful panel structure where he's out in like the foggy bay of San Francisco, it looks like. And he's got this bus full of these like high, like fantastical children. And you see him just panel by panel walk a little farther, a little farther, a little farther out into this foggy bay where he's like the one thing in the middle of this gray, misty panel. And then he just pops the entire bus in his mouth and eats it.
Yeah.
Which is, like, we've seen monsters like destroy things, eat people, but never in such a like premeditated, like purposeful way. Like, I am going to lure an entire bus of children and pop that whole bus in my mouth like it's a garlic knot. Chomp,
Right,
chomp.
yeah.
I'm going to eat all these kids.
Yeah, it is like I feel like it was one of the stereotypical things that like our generation heard growing up of just like, don't take candy from strangers, or right, or like and that's exactly what he did. Is he got all of these kids to eat this like magical candy, and it was so good and yummy, and it, like rainbows and double fisted cotton candy now, and all of that good stuff. And it like, yeah, he just walked out and was like, all right, lunchtime, here we go,
pop. And that is some of the best visual storytelling in the entire series, I think. I loved those panels.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that one was interesting too, because that one did take us back to Kaijumax, whereas most of the rest of this book was in this like VR space, right? So that was interesting to see, but then kind of like I had predicted, well, not exactly, but like I knew that there'd be something at the end, like there'd be some kind of like monster attack or invasion or something. But in volume 6, this is not really what I kind of expected. I think I was expecting maybe more so the prison to go downhill so much that the monsters kind of got loose, or that the corruption was so bad that was like, it was kind of not taken over, but it like stuff just kind of started to fall by the wayside more. That's more what I was expecting, so that we would get this like monster breakout, or the fact that they went back to this monster that like, oh, he's supposed to be the like biggest, most meanest, but like I was kind of expecting like something to happen to him, which they started to go down that route, but I was expecting him to somehow pop off and just go on a rampage, and maybe a number of the monsters had to team up or something at the end, but who knows. But that is not what we got here. We did, however, get an alien invasion, a multiple alien invasion, which in a weird way also kind of took a back seat. Like, that is just the like set dressing to what is happening. Like, you're not actually seeing the aliens really come down. You see them. The kaiju get enlisted to help fight the aliens away, but the stories really focus more so on the character journeys of a couple of the characters that we have already seen in this story. It's not really about the invasion per se. And one of those characters is Woofy. This man, we got to talk about our boy Woofy here. This is what I was alluding to at the start, where we got the answer to a mystery that I was interested in from when it was introduced. And that was one of the things of like, I hope we get more of this, because this is weird. Does this little kid that he keeps seeing, does he exist? What's happening here? So I just to remind everyone of Woofy's story, he was kind of this smaller, inconsequential monster, but he kept seeing this younger kid that was in the prison with him, and it was unclear of if this kid is real, if he snuck in the prison, or if this was a hallucination or an imaginary friend, something like that. But this kid kept pushing him to be the monster that he knows he is, right? Do bad stuff, do evil stuff. And that resulted in Woofy like poisoning his father, and then eventually growing up into the same kind of monster that his father was, I guess, evolving in a similar way to Pokemon. Not that Woofy is really supposed to be a Pokemon, but just in that same way, right? He changes forms. And yeah, he is this like terrifying looking monster, but he's still like trying to do his own thing and stay out of stuff.
Yeah.
There. And I think by the end of volume 4, he was really having a problem with this kid that he keeps seeing, to the point where I think at one point he squishes him. And that's kind of all that we see of him by the end of that one, if I'm not mistaken. But here in this volume, the kid is back. However, the kid is this like beat up, bloodied, like his guts are hanging out.
One of his arms is just a bone.
Just like, he's like, I know you're a monster. You're a terrible person. Like all of that stuff. So it is like, okay, this kid is definitely not real. Like he is hallucinating this, or this is some imaginary friend. But as the story continues, we learn a little bit more about Woofy's backstory and why his father was arrested, why he was arrested and put in jail when he was also so young. Is that, there was like his father was destroying this town. I think were they trying to keep something away from the town, and just in the collateral like ended up destroying a bunch of stuff, or was the dad actually just rampaging?
I think Ape Whale out there rampaging, but his son Woofy, his like innocent little boy, like didn't want to rampage. His dad and his dad's friend kept pushing him, and he's like, "No, I don't want to do that. Like I kind of like these people. I want to help these people." And he like got pushed into it, or like destroyed something by accident, and that's what's been haunting him. Yeah.
It's not just that he was there the day his father was rampaging, but he has this very specific memory of, amidst all of the destruction and chaos, he saw this one little boy, this little small kid in this yellow baseball hat, and lost track of the kid. So he never knew exactly what happened to the kid. And so in his mind, this is the thing that is scaring him the most, of what happened to that kid. Did he die? Did he get squished? Did I eat him? Did my dad eat him? Did he get crushed by a car? Who knows what? And this is the thing that's haunting him. And he made eye contact with this kid. And so he's also thinking like, if that kid survived, like, what does he think of me? Like, what was going through this kid's mind as he saw me, as we locked eyes here? And that is where we get this like hallucination of this little kid just being like, I know you're a terrible monster. You should just do all these bad things, right? And what we see is that there is, I guess, this like prison or prisoner like rehabilitation program or like reconciliation program is maybe a better word, where victims of some of these monster rampages can come to the prison and confront these monsters and have an open dialogue where some of these monsters now are remorseful. They want to change, right? They want to apologize, or sometimes they need to have the discussion to be like, hey, I wasn't actually rampaging. You misunderstood. Like, I was trying to help you. I was trying to save you, but I'm just so big. Like, I can't help it. It's just my circumstances. And so, the idea is to have this open discussion where they can kind of talk it out and see if that helps. And it doesn't necessarily go great. But Woofy ends up coming back for a second time. And he's like one of the only people that come back. And on the victims side, there's only like one other person that is dead. And I think he's the one that is running the program,
it's the
if I'm
mayor.
not mistaken.
Yeah, it's the mayor of the town. And he had brought in all of these senior citizens who were alive, who were adults at that time, to have this moment with Woofy. And then like the first meeting goes so badly, none of them come back. So then the mayor comes back on his own to try and talk to Woofy about trying this again, because he really thinks it is going to be helpful for everybody to have one of these discussions again.
Yeah, and he's like, Woofy's sitting there like, well, no one showed up. I don't know if this is really gonna work. Obviously, like, we didn't listen, they didn't listen, all that stuff. And the guy like just keeps insisting. He's like, no, you came back. Like, I know you are good. I know, like, you don't want to hurt these people, and it shows. And it gets to the conversation gets to like, well, how do you know? You weren't there that day. And he goes, actually, I was there that day. You might not recognize me now, but you might recognize me in this hat. And he puts on the yellow hat that the little boy had. And it's just the biggest gut punch of like, it's the little kid. Oh my God, he survived. He's so like, he knew that Woofy was here the whole time and is trying to like get through to him to like be like, hey, I forgive you. And there are people out there that want to have that same dialogue. And it's just like, man, this is such a good story. Like this, like I was not expecting that at all. And then he puts on the hat, and I was just like, oh, my heart. Oh no.
Right? And he's been also trying to convince Woofy to volunteer to join these soldiers, these kaiju soldiers who are fighting in this alien war. He's like, you're so big, you're so strong. I believe it. You have it in you. You could really help people a lot. I think you could protect a lot of people. And after Woofy realizes this is little boy, he grew up, he's okay, and he like banishes that like the mental projection of the damaged, hateful little boy. There's another incredible series of panels that's just the battleground from far away, and it keeps getting closer and like you keep zooming into it at these high speeds, and then it cuts out and it's Woofy running so fast through to the battlefield to like fight for people again. Wonderful. Some incredible panel structure we get in these last couple volumes.
Yeah, great stuff.
There's another really emotional moment I want to talk about where...
Go for it.
This was set up a while ago where one of the prisoners in Kaijumax was a big mountain. And like, that's the initial joke. That's not part of the terrain. That is a kaiju. That is a living mountain. And who doesn't talk, but can kind of like project images in your mind psychically. And we learned that mountain straight up ate a dude, and he's still in there. And so they pull out this like giant, like Ultraman sized skeleton of some former police officer. And Warden King's like, we thought he was MIA. We never knew what happened to him. Well, I have to go tell his widow now. And he goes up to space to the nebula of the eternal sunrise. And he tells the widow, like, we finally found out your husband died. This is what happened. And we see she's got like a little boy who was, barely remembers his father. And in this volume, in that same sort of reconciliation program, Warden King brings this widow and this boy who's like a teenager now. He brings him to kind of talk with this volcano, with this living mountain, where the living mountain is going to be sent to the death row. And the mountain just like projects the images of that death into the widow's mind. And she flips out. She's so furious at Warden King. Like, didn't you know that could have happened? Why'd you bring me down here? This was terrible. I never wanted to think about that. Why'd you put me in a situation where that could have been put in my head? And the whole time this is happening, the teenage son, you just see these like text bubbles over his phone where he's like texting his friend like, nah, dude, I can't hang out today. Like, I got this dumb thing I have to do with my mom. He's like texting back and forth with his friend, and his friend's like, You've been out for a while. Are you doing okay? Yeah, my mom's upset about something. I don't know what it is. How are you doing, dude? You want to come over to my house? I've got like a cool new ball we can play with. And while the teenage boy is texting his friend, the mom is like driving them home in their spaceship, and she's talking about these kaiju, and she's like, I know he's bad. I know he's bad all the way through. I know I'm not supposed to say this, that good people can come from anywhere. But I think some people, they're just born bad. It comes from their parents. It comes from their upbringing. Badness is in them, and you can't ever get it out. And as the teenage boy is texting in the backseat to his friend, and his friend's like, hey, dude, check out the cool new toy I got. And he sends a photo of him, and it's the son of Go-Go Space Baby and Zon. Zon, yep. The worst character in this entire series. Like the most bad dude. A baby who was born in the prison last volume, and we saw got adopted by some space couple. And now he's grown up, and like just the cut to just him texting the photo to his friend. It's like,
yeah,
that
just this like innocent little toy. Like, look, I have a new baseball, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it was just a really, really great way to show the the mom is saying one thing that's ending up like, okay, you're going down this like racist, classist like thing that's happening here, and just the kid being the like typical teen, like, oh, I don't want to be here, like I think this is stupid and boring, and then it is this like counter example of like, here's the scenario that the mom is describing, and the kid is just happy about a new toy, right? New baseball. He's the sweetest thing. Just that's it. Like, is not a bad guy yet.
Yeah, I really like that juxtaposition again, especially with these characters who are way out on the fringes of the story, being brought in these very minor ways, and that's what can give you one of the strongest emotional punches. Like, the story is so efficient at things like that, and that character, Dinah Seven, I think is his adopted child's name. He ends up being a surprisingly large part of the final couple issues, because this big alien battle they're fighting takes them to the realm of the Eternal Sunrise, this neighborhood where he was adopted. And that place is like at the center of time. So all time is kind of overlapping each other. So we see in his birth mom, Go-Go Space Baby, she gets sent and she volunteers to go into the war. She gets sent there, and she knows, like, I know my son was adopted. I think the parents lived somewhere around here. I don't know if I'm ever going to see him again. And because of this time loop that area just lives in, this weird singularity that exists permanently, that everybody's aware of, like, oh, that's just what it's like to live in the nebula of the Eternal Sunrise. You know, you're all sorts of ages all the time. Like, she sees her son at all different ages of his life, at all different milestones, having all sorts of different reactions to seeing her and realizing who she is and talking with her. There's like a whole, I don't know if it's a whole issue, but there's a sizable amount of time spent on that story.
Right. From her perspective, it's happening so fast. Whereas to him, it's happening over decades. Whereas like he gets to meet her. I forget when exactly how old he was when he meets her. I think it was like right as he was about to get married. Like he like is the first time that he meets his mom.
Yeah, like,
oh right, he sees her like, once before and is like, "Why are you staring at me?" And then she's like, "Nothing. Never mind. I'll go leave." And there's no real confrontation. And then the next time they see each other, it's like 10 years down the road for him. But it's like an hour or two later for her. And he's 10 years older. He's about to get married, and he's like, wait, like I know who you are now. Like I looked up what my mom looked like. I have the photo. This is you here. Like, I know who you are. And they have their ups and downs still for the conversation of like, hey, I don't want to talk to you abandoned me, stuff like that, when she leaves, and then they see each other again, and she asks like how his wife is, and he's already like, it didn't work out, like all of that stuff, and she's so sorry. And it's just, she ends up being the one stable thing in his life, despite not actually ever being there for him. That she is the one that took an interest, asked how things were, was trying to see him, even though she really couldn't. Like, he now is starting, like, because he's older, he has that wisdom and that life experience to be like, even if she wanted to, she couldn't have been here. Like, she maybe made a choice that I don't like, but it was the only choice that she could have made. And he has some understanding there. And yeah, it was just another like emotional, like, man, I was not expecting all of these character journeys to end up in these great places. And yeah, I'm just bravo.
Right. I love that boy who, like, the murdered officer's son, the surly son who's on the phone all day, like, that is a relationship, like a friendship you see persist throughout those two characters' lives. Like, he's giving this really loving best man speech at that wedding.
Right. Yeah.
Like, that is a true friendship for these characters we've spent only a couple pages with. Yeah. And then, like, yeah, like you said, like, she's the only, like, her just being around, and the mechanism, like, what all these kaiju are doing, these huge stories high kaiju, they have to just pluck the spaceships out of the sky before they land. So they're just walking around this very posh neighborhood,
smashing it,
right, with these like satchels, and they just got to grab a UFO out of the sky or grab it where it's stuck in a tree and put it in their like containment bag. So they're just around all the time. Like, there's no actual warfare going around in this area. He just sees her around the same way you would see like a mail carrier or something. Yeah. And just over the years, as he sees her more and more, and as his perspective shifts as he grows older, he has this amazing connection with her. And to her, it's like, this is the baby I only gave up a couple months ago. It's a really special issue. I like the time we spent there. I like that we got to see her talking to Mechazon. Like, Zon was her baby's father, and Mechazon is the mecha version of that kaiju who was designed to fight him. Like, I like that even just for 2 pages, we get to see those characters kind of connect over having that strange thing in common. I like that these final couple issues where these kaiju volunteer to leave the prison and go serve in this war. We get to see them in like interesting different combinations with each other.
Yeah. I do, however, want to get back to our main character, non-main character, Electogor here. Electogor. Because this is where there was one thing that flat out confused me. So at the end of volume 4, Dr. Zhang, right, finally hits the button and goes down to a smaller size.
I was going to say, finally you call her Dr. Zhang and not Nurse Zhang.
Dr. Nurse Zhang.
Doctor. She went to 12 years of Kaiju medical school.
Dr. Nurse, help me out, please. So that was the thing, like the emotional payoff at the end of those volumes is that she finally gets unstuck. And like she can go back down to size. Also, maybe like I guess, I mean, maybe I did at the time. It never really stood out to me that she was in a relationship with Electogor's daughter. I know they struck up a friendship because they were protecting one another in this thing. I guess it didn't really hit me that they were like in a more romantic relationship. So when we see her still as a giant like Ultraman like figure in this romantic relationship, I was like, wait, what? What is happening here? I don't did I miss something here? So why, like, if she's now unstuck, why is she still in the prison? Like, wouldn't they put her in a different situation then? Like, get her out of that suit?
I guess maybe she kept that a secret. Like, she was able to... I don't know. Like, she shrank herself down. I don't remember this because I accidentally read too far ahead, as discussed on previous episodes. So what you're talking about, I read like 2 months ago. I don't remember it that well. But I think she like was able to get herself unstuck and shrink back down to normal human size. But maybe it was like in the midst of the battle, and then she was able to embiggen herself again. And maybe that bond she forged with Torgax. And as we learned, like after being thrown in prison, she actually lost her medical license. She's just Miss Zhang.
She
now
has nothing to go back to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And, we never had any reference to any sort of family or friends or anything she had on the outside. So maybe pretending to live as a giant Ultraman and living in the prison and dating Torgax is what she wants to do.
Who knows? Yeah. That being said, once a bunch of the kaiju volunteer to help in the war efforts, and Electogor goes out there and hopes to find his daughter because he knows that she is also a fighter and will want to help and stuff like that. Ends up reuniting with his daughter. It's a fantastic scene, but also is just completely horrified by the fact that his daughter is now dating Dr. Zhang here, because he has history with her and all of this stuff, and it's just like, I don't like her, I hate her, but then also has this very nice emotional moment at the end where it like at the end of the day he's like, look, I may not like you, and that's okay, like I'm an adult, I can move on and stuff like that. And she is wanting to like be apologetic and say sorry and make up for what she has done. But at the end of the day, he's just like, it's not me that you need to like fix stuff with. It's with my daughter. Like, take care of her.
Yeah.
And that was also just a nice, like, this is sweet. This is a real good character journey here. All of this, just the stuff that happened in volume 1 and 2 back in the day there. So yeah, I enjoyed this book a lot. I think there's a lot of just really surprisingly emotional stories. Great character journeys. It's just an encyclopedic joyride of like, reference, look at that Easter egg, they do this, they do that thing. Yeah, man,
there's so much.
I had a blast with this book. So
yeah, I think it's very funny. Even if you don't get the joke, you can see that a joke is happening and you're like, wow, I know so much work went into whatever this reference is. I wish I knew. I wish like, we just have to wait for the collected like third mega volume with the director's notes to come out, so we can have Zander Cannon's explanations for every little bit of detail that's packed into this thing. Because there's so much. Like everything is so thought out to like so many levels. Because it's all kaiju and everything's giant size. There's like not really any proper setting you can get off the shelf. Everything has extra thought put into it just to put it on this scale.
Yeah, it might that third deluxe edition might be out. It might be available for you to buy. It's just as of recording this, was not available on Comixology Unlimited. But like we said, that those 5th and 6th volumes were, so that was a huge help for us to just be like, we got to read these two.
Perfect. Very helpful.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah,
Indeed.
I really enjoyed these books, and I really enjoyed that this was something we picked for the ongoing monthly series, sticking this thing out through the end. It you're right, it matured. You could see just the escalation in craftsmanship, in emotional storytelling. We had really great ends to supporting characters as well. Like Daniel ascends to like a full goat god form, and then he's protecting Sharkmon. And when we spent a lot of time with the terror of Pago, who's always just been one of those monsters who's around, and he gets a little bit more to do in this book. And you're like,
the very last panel in the whole book. Yeah.
Right. And you realize as soon as the war starts and he volunteers, you're like, oh no, we've spent enough time with the terror of Pago Pago where like he's going to be the first one to die. And then he is. But you're right. He gets the final page in the book, which is under this narration of Electogor talking about, he's like giving an interview to a journalist about the sense of renewal and how like things will come back. You just keep going. You keep trying. You'll get a fresh start. Yeah. You'll get a reboot. And then like he emerges and like he was, after he died in the war, he was given like a burial at sea. And then you see him emerging from the sea in a half like cyborg form as the protector of Pago
Pago. And then he does finger guns and says, now that's what I'm talking about.
Perfect ending. Right. And again, you'd never expect that's the character you end on. But right, after everything, it feels right.
Absolutely. So here's something that I also found interesting. There in the back of volume 6 here, there is an interview with Zander Cannon that was published in this. And I really liked this question here because it's always interesting to see like what bits of the stories didn't make it in, like what other ideas did they have and not was not explored. So the question was there anything weird that you planned that didn't make it in? And Zander answered, sure. Daniel was going to have some kind of bad luck power.
Yeah.
The prison was originally going to use guards that had been kidnapped, drugged, and brainwashed for some reason. And all of season 1 and 2's content was originally going to be crammed into season 1. There was going to be some kind of katakana and Hangul writing system for the cell creator numbers that I wisely de-emphasized. There was going to be more of a language barrier between the human and monster languages, as well as a tiny roaring interpreter. That would have still been a good gag, but an exhausting thing to keep straight as the stories got longer and more complex. And yeah, I think that was wise to not put that in there. Because even if because I think that was one of my questions last time. It was like, how does everyone understand one another here exactly? Are they speaking English? Are they not? Are they? Because they're all speaking different languages here, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, it's comics. Just have fun. Just suspend your disbelief. It's a good big dumb fun story. Just have a blast. So there you go. I enjoyed this book, but I think that's kind of about it that I had for Kaijumax. Go check it out.
Yes.
Go check it out. Cool. Let me see here if we have. I don't think we have anything for bingo. I just want to pull this up here.
We all have memorized what our final squares are.
Yeah. Okay. So it is the last time that we had covered this. So we always like to do our recommendations on the first and last of when we cover these end of the month things here. So Melissa, what else might you recommend to people if they enjoyed Kaijumax?
I don't think I've ingested any new kaiju or prison related content since the last time we did this. Although I did just watch Turning Red, and I don't want to really spoil it too much, but that is secretly a kaiju movie in the third act.
Interesting. All right.
Just know that. Just know that when the Red Pandas gets very, very big and smashes a Toronto landmark.
Good stuff. I mean, I think there was the obvious ones that we mentioned last time, the just different prison stories like Oz on HBO. I mean, you can even throw in different like crime stories and stuff like The Wire, because each season of The Wire focuses on like the drug problem in a different perspective. Like here it is for politics or the schools or the prison or the docks and the labor unions over here. Like they each focus on a different aspect of that. And I think in the same way that this was kind of episodic of like, here it is just in the main prison. Here it is in the women's prison. Here's death row. Here's what the guards do on the outside. Here's some of the gangs on the outside and what they do, right? There's stuff like that. I would also recommend there's a manga called Pluto, which is a collaboration between Osamu Tezuka, the creator of Astro Boy, and one of my favorite mangakas, Naoki Urasawa. And it's an alternate take on Astro Boy told from the perspective like of a side character. And it's also a crime noir, which is really interesting, but it focuses on all these like giant robots and stuff like that, and it is this like sci-fi murder mystery crime noir thing. It's just a really interesting take, and I think in the same way that this story examines the prison and just all aspects of that stuff, this is just but in like it examines that stuff but through the lens of these giant monsters. I think it's just an interesting way to like, what are other stories out there that you can examine from a different perspective? And it's just like, oh, that like Astro Boy has this completely like alternate take on it that ends up being fantastic. I would also like to recommend one of my personal favorite comics. My favorite thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. This is a book that I picked up in my comic book store and started to check it out, and immediately was like, I need to talk about this book with someone because it is incredible. And even some of the stories behind that book and how it was made and the troubles that the Emil Ferris had to overcome to get that book published and made is incredible. I'll spare you for right now, but it is also a like monster, like this young girl is so in love with like monster Mayovis, the universal monster Mayovis, that when she looks at herself in the mirror, she likens herself to the wolf man. And so all of these people in her life and the characters she meets, she kind of sees them as monsters in different ways. And it man, the artwork in that book is fucking incredible. It's all made with ballpoint pen. And the mix of realism and this like cartoon caricature monster stuff that's in there is just fascinating. It's surreal, and it's a great like murder mystery thing that happens in that. One day I hope to bring that back here on the review show. I did cover it on an old incarnation of a Whatnauts podcast, but somehow, some way we need to cover that book again because it is just fantastic. But that would be also one that I recommend because it is like some of these characters. It's like, oh, this character is very obviously Frankenstein here, right? Like that is who they look like, and this one's the Wolf Man, and this one's that one, right? But yeah, it is a beautiful, beautiful tale. I know there was supposed to be a second part. I don't think it's been made yet. I don't know if there's been any movement on that. I think it was supposed to be out years ago, but I don't know what happened with that. But that first book is still just incredible. So I highly recommend that. So those will be my recommendations.
Cool. I remember seeing that title going through the old episode archives, but I don't think you've ever recommended it since we've been recording together. That sounded fresh to me.
Yeah, I don't think I've really mentioned it all that much, but it is a personal favorite of mine. It's also one that I own physically. I don't think it's on Comixology Unlimited, so that's why it's never really come up as like, this is one of the ones we can read. Like if we do that, either we'd have to buy it again on Comixology, or you'd have to like find it in a library or buy your own copy. And it's a big, expensive book. So it'd be difficult for us to do. But somehow I'd love to do that book down the road. So there you go. Those are our recommendations. So Melissa, I already kind of mentioned it earlier when we were doing housekeeping, but we already know what we're going to be doing for next week, which is The Muppets Christmas Carol, which should be a lot of fun. We're starting to do our holiday themed pitches. I've seen this one, I think, a long time ago, but it's one of those things of just like, I don't really know all that much about Muppet stuff, but it'll be our second time having Muppet content on the podcast this year.
Very close together.
Pretty exciting. Yeah.
I was very surprised you picked that one when you could have picked Batman.
I could have. So yeah, I'm excited for that. That is what we will do this next week. However, I think you already know what we are going to be doing for our first end of the month special in the new year. Since we like to take off the last week or two of the end of the year, we don't do an end of the month special in December, but we'll start back up in January.
Yeah, and we take turns nominating a new monthly ongoing series to each other because this is such a commitment. Like I don't want it to be the same pitch structure we normally do for something we'll just do on 1 week. Like I want you to actively agree to like be part of this thing for 4 straight months. So I asked you, hey, I have an idea. Do you want to know what it is? And you were like, no, you can just go ahead and tell me what it is.
Surprise me.
I like to use this space for TV shows I really feel like I need to catch up on, that I feel like I should see all of. That's my personal goal for these ongoing monthly series. I feel like I should watch that entire thing and not just season 1 of that thing for a weekly episode. And I know that unless I make it podcast content, I will never get around to watching the entire thing in my own time. And one of my biggest holes is sitcoms. I've seen like a couple episodes of most contemporary sitcoms, and I haven't seen all of any of them.
Okay.
So I wanted to pitch a sitcom that felt like it was a manageable length and had enough depth and kind of mythology to it to be a really interesting conversation every month. Like it was a show that definitely had an arc, and it's been so highly praised. I don't think you're going to disagree with this when I say I think our next series should be The Good Place.
Amazing you said that, because my partner just today was like, I demand that we watch this like very soon here. Because I had made some comments that I was like, I don't know the actor's name, but I know he was in The Good Place, all of that stuff. And I was like, I hadn't seen the show. She was like, you haven't seen it? Oh my God. Like, we need to watch it. So yeah, sounds good. Let's watch The Good Place.
Okay. I hope I'm not throwing a wrench in any of your personal watching plans to tell you we're going to talk about this at the end of January.
Not at all. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Cool. Well, yeah, that is what we will do at the end of January then. So be on the lookout for that.
And it's a 4-season show. I think the seasons are like 12 or 13 episodes each. So it's way less of a time commitment than Fringe was at this time last year. I spent so much of the first part of last year on Fringe, which was a really rewarding experience. But I wanted something like a little lighter than that wasn't going to be 24-hour-long TV episodes every month. And I think it's all on Netflix.
Cool. Good stuff. I'm excited about that. But yeah, I think that is about it for this week. That's it for our coverage of Kaijumax. So Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WilkyWit. That's WilkyWit. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, a show where me and my brother Jams talk about weird old kid shows you feel like only you remember. I forget if it's out now. It's either our last episode or our most our forthcoming episode. But we did look back on Batman the Animated Series in memory of Kevin Conroy.
Yeah. Yeah. Sad stuff that he passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. If you guys would like to find me, I am at Yo Kyle Springer on Twitter and Hive. And if you guys would like, and on co-host too. And if you guys would like to follow all the stuff we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter and Hive and co-host, all that good stuff. If you're on the YouTube version of this, we got some more videos right over there for you all to check out. But this has been number 233 of the Whatnauts review show. So we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.